Good afternoon. Thanks, Jamie, and thanks all for joining us today. My name is Tim Cawley, President Con Edison. We are in our CERC in Manhattan, and we pulled together this CERC, our Corporate Emergency Response Center, to manage big issues on the system. The storm from Tuesday night is certainly one of them. And really what this does is allow us to manage the system through our incident command structure. Each part of the company comes together to support those folks in the field who are restoring power. So this is logistics for mutual aid crews, engineering analysis, transportation, stores and materials. All of that comes together here so that the folks in the field can efficiently and effectively restore service. Typically, there are many more people in the room. We adjusted our policies and procedures ahead of this season in light of COVID and social distancing. So we're equally as effective as we were. We did some pre-planning to make sure that happened. But there are less people here with the same effectiveness, lots of people remote providing support to those frontline workers. So today I'll provide an update on the restoration status. We continue to make good progress. And I'll give you the figures later. But first, let me address our customers, particularly those who are still out of lights. We recognize the hardship. Even a small outage or a short outage can have on people's lives. Extended outages are extremely difficult. And you need to know that we here and the people in the field are solely focused on restoring your power as quickly and safely as possible. And I'll provide some details later, but we get it that it's really difficult and frustrating, but we're doing our best and we are making progress. So to begin with, I'll share where we were. So the storm hit on Tuesday night, 300,000 customers impacted, 180,000 in the city, 120,000 in Westchester County, rough numbers. And really this was a tree event. High winds knocked down trees and limbs. And when the trees and limbs come down, it impacts our infrastructure, the poles, wires, and transformers. I was in Queens earlier today visiting with some of our crews, and I can tell you they're focused and they're making progress. On one location in particular, 2 trees down, and at this stage in the restoration, there's a lot of work. They had to sort of clear 2 trees, install a transformer, and raise up all the wires or the conductors on the pole for a smaller number of customers restored. So lots of work for fewer restores, and that's the period of the storm we're in. In terms of progress, we've restored power to roughly 270 of the 300,000 customers that were originally impacted. About a little less than 10,000 remain out of power, storm-related power in New York City, and about 24,000 in Westchester. So in terms of restoration, where we're going to take this, we continue to track toward restoring all of those New York City customers impacted by Tuesday's storm by 11 p.m. tonight. And in Westchester County, it's 11 p.m. tomorrow night. And in each of those cases, there could be real small scattered outages that we continue to work into the next day. We have a small army that is doing this work, and really it's because we want to move the restoration along as quickly as we can. Over 3,800 field crews focused on this restoration. 1,700 of our Con Ed employees are out there, along with 2,100 contractor and mutual aid crews working. In addition to those field crews, there's lots of support behind them. I mentioned CERC earlier. So really the whole company is focused on this singular mission of restoring power to those who remain out. In addition to restoring power, we're communicating with our customers. Really important to keep folks informed about the status of their outage. We make daily outbound calls to individuals with health issues that require particular equipment. We've made over 800,000 calls during this event, reaching out and ensuring they're okay. We're issuing estimated times of restoration to customers and encourage customers to look on our outage map to see the status of their outage, where they sit in the queue in terms of restoration time. Dry ice, we're in Westchester, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx. At the dry ice distribution centers, We also have Con Ed representatives that can help out with questions you may have. We've distributed over 15,000 bags of ice since the start of the event, and you can go to coned.com to get the precise locations and hours of that distribution. And lastly, before I take questions, the claims process, and I mentioned it at the top of my remarks, we understand that being without power is an incredible hardship, even for a short period, and for an extended period, it is really difficult. And in our region in particular, that outage is compounded by COVID. COVID has impacted our region significantly. And in light of that, those two things, to help out, we've expanded our claims policy to provide customers who lost power with food spoilage reimbursements. So for the details on the claims policy, you can go to our website, and it's all laid out there along with the form and the process to follow. So with that, Jamie, I'll open up to questions.
Thank you, Tim. If you have a question for Con Ed President Tim Cawley, go to the raise your hand button. Please state your full name, state your news organization, and we will unmute you. So I'm not seeing any questions. We're going to give everybody a minute. Okay, we have Hazel Sanchez of CBS2. Hazel, you have the floor. If you can unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call. Question, the Queensboro president has been very critical about Con Ed's response to the outages, saying basically, I mean, in so many words, that Queens is like the ugly stepchild that has been the forgotten borough, and the response there has been slower than all of the responses to the other boroughs. What's your response to hearing that?
So no particular response to the comment. I can tell you that the outages in Queens are really driven by a lot of heavy tree damage. And we're really working through that tree damage to get the restorations. And we're working through it, and we're making progress, and we expect to get the vast majority in all the boroughs back by this evening. But really driven by the significant tree damage. The same is true in Westchester. The Westchester restoration times will occur finally tomorrow, and it's because of the extensive urban forest in Westchester and the damage that brought when the winds took those trees down.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Any other questions for Tim Cawley? Oh, go ahead, Hazel.
Sorry, just a quick follow-up to that question. Because you said this was like basically a tree situation, do you think that the city maybe needs to step up, or I don't even know if there's one that's actually in place at this point, with some sort of a pre-storm tree pruning task force or something of that nature, that where they could go out when they're expecting a severe storm and go out to some of these troublesome neighborhoods where they know that there are vulnerable trees, older trees that could come down? Do you think that the city should maybe step up their efforts in that kind of situation?
I don't know the precise details of the city program, but I know they do have vegetation management programs. We have a program where we trim around the conductors. It's part of our maintenance programs to keep the overhead system reliable. We also have a program that our arborists identify sick and dying trees, frankly, and we remove them. You do have to remember, we're removing the worst of the trees. There are hundreds of thousands of trees in our service territory, and this particular storm on Tuesday evening came through from the southern part of Staten Island all the way through northern Westchester, and really took down some healthy trees, some healthy limbs, some sick trees. So it's a big issue. I know they have programs, and we do as well. The storm was incredibly powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. And now we're going to speak to Robert Pozariki. Forgive me if I got your name wrong. Robert Pozariki of AM New York. Are you there?
Yes, I am, and you got my name very close. Thank you very much. Tim, so you mentioned that the storm has been a really major tree event with regards to the winds, and this has happened before. with other storms that hit the area, particularly Superstorm Sandy, before that Tropical Storm Irene. Has the Con Ed given any serious thought to expanding the program to move the lines underground in certain parts of the city?
So yeah, and you mentioned Irene and Superstorm Sandy. Superstorm Sandy was the biggest event to impact the territory and our customers. This event is number 2 in the company's history. And so you hit that right on the head. It was a very big event. We're doing a lot to harden our system against the impacts of this. I mentioned some of our vegetation management and danger tree removal programs earlier, but we're also hardening our infrastructure. And that entails things like installing smart switches. Prior to the program, if a tree came down, it might impact 1,000 customers, get isolated and interrupted. With more switches in the air, the switches can sense where that tree comes down and where the fault occurs and narrow down the isolation such that 250 or 500 customers may be impacted. So part of the risk mitigation is avoiding the outage in the first place or minimizing it. We invest $3 billion a year in our overall energy delivery systems, and we target over 25 million a year specifically for the purposes of hardening our overhead distribution system. And again, those are switches, those are larger poles, different types of cable. And we started this a few years ago. And when we do backcasts on different storm events and predict what would have been versus what is with the investment in place, we're seeing that we're avoiding about 20% of the outages that would have otherwise occurred. So we're going to continue to invest in those programs because it makes a difference. We do some selective undergrounding. Undergrounding is incredibly expensive, particularly when you have an existing overhead system. You really need to do 2 things. You need to bring all the conductors underground, and then each of the homeowners or commercial establishments need to adjust their point of entry. So right now, from an overhead system, they're receiving their power typically on the 2nd floor, through the front yard, up in the air. They'd have to adjust that to allow for a trench on their property against the side of their foundation. And that's a cost that the customers would bear. It's very expensive. So undergrounding the system wholesale is really prohibitive, but we do it in specific strategic spots on the system where that investment mitigates risk. And I'll give you the most basic example. If we have a substation and on a pole line, there are 2 critical circuits in the air going out from that substation, we might underground one of those 2 circuits such that if a tree comes down, we'll lose one of 2 and not both, and it allows us to flexibly switch and get people back in power much sooner. So we do it selectively and strategically, but on a wholesale basis, it's really prohibitive from a cost perspective.
Tim Cawley, would you give us any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
Just to say to the customers who are still out, we are working diligently to get you back. We understand the hardship, and we're not going to stop our singular focus until such time as you're all restored. I was in Queens today with those crews, and they have that singular focus in mind. They're working, it's pretty hot out there today. They are working hard to get you back in lights. That's why they're in this industry. So we appreciate your patience, and we're doing everything we can to get you back in lights. That's all, Jamie.
Thanks very much, Tim Cawley, Con Ed President. Thanks everyone for joining us. That concludes our briefing for Sunday, August 9th. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks all.